feel like I'm doing senior level work, but not getting senior level recognition or senior level feedback. This is something I hear a lot, and it is not necessarily because of lack of skill, and it's more because of a gap between expectations of what entry level software engineer, a senior level software engineer, a staff level software engineer should be doing, and what those engineers are doing. We often talk about engineering levels like they're precise. Most companies will even have listings of role descriptions of software engineer one, software engineer two, etc. However, in fact, those are not rigid rules. They're not to be considered like a checkbox as if I'm doing these things, that means I am at this level. Really, those things have overlap. So remember back to your statistics classes where we talked about whisker boxes. Uh, the statistical um, use case that we use for those would be to show if there's any overlap in data between one point or another. So a specific level for software engineering is not going to be a point on a graph, but it's more considered a range. There's going to be an overlap regardless of what company you are at. And so I thought for a minute it might be a good idea to talk a little bit about what some of these expectations could be, um, so that uh, when you are asking for feedback, you can gauge yourself against who you are and what you're currently doing, and then check with your managers, mentors, peers to see if that's really what you're delivering. My name's Bob Deckard. I'm a software engineering manager. For the past 8 to 10 years, I have been teaching, coaching, and mentoring software engineers from entry level to mid level to staff and even into software engineer manager roles. Some of the things that I have learned over these years, I thought I could pass on to you all and help you grow your own careers. So here we go. Um, Thinking of an entry level software engineer, and again, I'm not going to drain the ocean on all the things that an entry level software engineer would do, but there's going to be two different things that we talk about with each level, honestly. And there's going to be a technical expectation, and then there's going to be some feedback expectation. With an entry level software engineer, most of the feedback, most of the expectations are going to be in the technical realm, writing correct code, learning the tools that a team uses, and understanding the systems that the team uses. The feedback that one would normally get would be on the level of correctness of code. So that's not just best practices for code, but it's also the team dynamics on how the team itself likes to write code. Um, the other feedback will go into asking questions. So, as an entry level engineer, the quality of your questions can actually be part of what you will be rated on and what your expectations will be. And then, of course, learning speed. So, how quickly one can pick up the new technologies of the team or the new system of the team, etc. Um, the self awareness question to ask yourself here is, do I know what I don't know yet? That's going to be the key question that gets you to go to the next level. Once you know what you don't know, you can create your own path. And we'll talk about setting goals later on, not this episode, but in a few other episodes. Asking for help is probably the biggest strength here. So, knowing when you're stuck, knowing how long you should be stuck for, and knowing how to get unstuck. For a software engineer, too, uh, here the focus shifts to ownership. So I'm going to assume that a software engineer too can write code efficiently on their own without too much help. Um, but then, so some of the technical expectations would be being able to ship a feature from end to end, being able to handle more ambiguity. So software engineer one would need very clear steps and even more clear and more directive acceptance criteria for a story for a ticket that they have, whereas a software engineer too can take some of those points of ambiguity and make their own decisions. The feedback is going to rely, or is going to really kind of focus on reliability. If I ask you to do something, is it going to get done? The feedback is going to focus on follow through, and then communication as well. So here again, we expect for the software engineer two to kind of have those entry level jitters gone, and maybe that fear of asking questions. A software engineer two maybe better understands the fact that no one expects them to know everything, and that we do expect a lot of questions from more senior members. And now for a senior software engineer, a lot of times we might think that that means that we're going to write that a senior software engineer's expectation is to just be great at code, to be an actual coding wizard. And to some degree, yes, that's true. Truly, we all understand, those of us that have been in the industry for a while, we all understand that that just means we Googled it before and more times, and we kind of know the answers and we know where to get to. But it's not just about writing tougher code. To be a senior software engineer, some of those expectations are going to be to reduce work for the rest of the team, future work, current work, and making ways to create leverage so that the team can perform better entirely. The feedback here is going to focus on design decisions, trade-offs for speed or for memory or for whatever the case may be, and then mentoring as well. So a senior software engineer will have some responsibilities to mentor the more junior folks, to help them understand the best ways of writing their code, and the best ways even of sometimes of just asking questions. When we get into the staff level, the technical expectation is going to be more along the lines of aligning entire systems with business needs. So architecting out the entire decision field and helping the senior engineer manage those decisions as well. There will be much more navigation of ambiguity. In fact, the staff engineer a lot of times might be working with a product manager to write out those acceptance criteria based on what a user story may be. So that staff engineer will be responsible for writing very detailed acceptance criteria for our entry level folks, and maybe not have to work quite as hard or work with the SE2 or the senior engineer to write out acceptance criteria in those cases. The feedback there is going to go back to clarity, like how clear they can be when they are writing these stories and when they're talking with the more junior engineers about what to do in order to complete their stories. Some feedback is going to be on influence, as that person who is going to be aligning systems and deciding systems and architectures. They need to be able to influence the team, and even honestly a little bit be influenced. So just because someone's staff doesn't necessarily mean that they have all the best answers, but they need to be asking all the best questions. And then the other focus area for a staff feedback is going to be cross-team collaboration. So are they working with product? Are they working with UX? Are they working with business partners? Are they potentially working across teams to find out what else needs to be done to accomplish the tasks? And then when we look at an engineering manager, engineering managers are going to be truly looking at optimizing all of the outcomes for the entire team, but not necessarily them doing the work directly, but more directing the work. So optimizing those outcomes through other people. Technical skills still will matter. A software engineer manager, again, even needs to know questions like a staff engineer would. So if a new technology comes about, a software engineer manager may be helping to make those decisions on whether to jump onto the new technology. And a software engineer manager is as well going to be working with business partners and working across teams to find out how to best provide value to the things that they're working on. And then here again, judgment for a manager is really going to be what matters more than a technical skill. The decisions they make and the decision quality. The feedback is going to focus on team growth, on how they prioritize the things that the team is going to work on, and then again, like I said, decision quality. So those expectations are not at all exhaustive of everything that someone might need to be able to do to be a software engineer one, a software engineer two. senior software engineer, staff software engineer, or software engineering manager. There is a lot more that comes into it. So I would suggest research your title and know where the awareness is and know what the expectations are so that you can ask better questions as you try to go forward. And then again, that self-awareness is going to come through too. So understand if you are not quite where you want to be, what those gaps are, and then start asking your manager for to have experiences that can get you that can fill those gaps. um, Feedback feels confusing if you think you're going to be evaluated at one level but you're being evaluated at another, or feedback feels confusing if the expectations that you have for your role are not aligned with the expectations that your manager has for the role. um, some things that you can do to become a little bit more self-aware. And here's the challenge that I'm going to give y'all. Write down the level that you think you're operating at, write down the level that you think you're being evaluated at, and then write down one expectation gap between them. It's not about judging yourself, it's about becoming clear about what those expectations are so that you can better meet those expectations. A few questions that can help along the way. So, as a software engineer one, I think I already told you a question you can ask yourself: do I know what I don't know yet? So there's going to be some things no matter what level you were at, there are things that you don't know. And I think the software engineer one is probably the most worried about not knowing everything. By the time I got to staff engineer, the only thing I knew for sure was that I didn't know as much as I needed to know for my role. And there was always going to be more learning. But for an entry level, and when I was entry level, I was afraid to ask sometimes because I thought it would show my weakness or show my vulnerability. But what I eventually found out is it showed my opportunities. For a software engineer too, can people trust me to deliver without being reminded? For a senior software engineer, am I multiplying the team's effectiveness? For a staff software engineer, do people come to me when things are unclear? And then for the engineering manager, is the team stronger because of how I lead? And that's a big one to me. That's one that I like to take home. So, in short, we need to know what's expected of us in order for us to meet those expectations. If we're not having conversations about what those expectations are, no matter what else, no matter how good the feedback you get is, there's always going to feel a little bit of a disconnect, and there's always going to be some discomfort. So make sure that you're asking those questions, make sure that you know what's expected of you, understand that your manager may give you a list of expectations, and it doesn't mean that if you check off all those boxes you get that next promotion. That's not always the way it works, because there is overlap. There's always going to be a little bit of some things that a software engineer one are doing that is the same things that a software engineer two are doing. So don't expect that you can check off some boxes and get that promotion. What I do expect you to do is remember the ABCs of coding: always be coding, and sometimes always be clear about expectations. Thanks, y'all.